Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. And if there was ever a Leading in Challenging Times program, this is going to be it, because our guest has just been announced as one of the USA Today's Women of the Year. But she comes from Hutchinson, Kansas. She and I talked before the program a little bit, started coloring on the floor of one of our Eagle radio stations in Hutchinson, Kansas. Our guest is Jade Piros de Carvalho. And Jade, good to have you on our program today.
Oh, thank you so much, Gary. So great to be with you and to meet you finally.
Well, you know what? When you talk about honors, this is a big honor. I had a chance to look through the other women from across our country who were nominated and selected as Woman of the Year. And you started out in Hutchinson, obviously at the radio station, doing some coloring, but then you were on the city council. You worked on the city council. You were mayor, I believe, moved to the Office of Broadband Development in the state. And now you have this honor. So congratulations. But tell me about your job today, and then we'll go back and kind of talk about how you got here. What's your job today?
Yeah, great. So I have the honor of serving as the Director of Broadband Development for the state of Kansas. This is an office started by Governor Kelly in response to the pandemic at the end of 2020, and we're housed in the Kansas Department of Commerce. Our mission is to bring affordable, high-speed, reliable broadband to every Kansan.
And one of the jobs I know that is hard to do is finding out where to do that. Where did you start when you took over this position?
Yeah, so I was originally, I came from the private side, and I was working in the broadband space for a local fiber optic provider called IdeaTech in a small community of Buhler, Kansas, right outside of Hutchinson. And my role shifted over the course of 7 years. I was in sales and marketing, PR, and then I really focused on rural broadband expansion policy advocacy. So a lot of policy advocacy work and trying to convince lawmakers that rural broadband mattered and that, this was a key component of quality of life. And it was a really difficult job to do pre-pandemic, and then post-pandemic, we could skip over all of that because it became really clear that broadband is more of a necessity and not a luxury. So that's kind of where I came from moving into this space.
One of the things that in reading some of the notes was when you were on the Hutchinson City Council, you were there for multiple years. And in being a part of that, your fellow commissioners had some really neat things to say about you. And in being, leading through challenging times, being a leader on a city council, city commission, that's a challenging role in and of itself. What got you started in that leadership direction?
Oh, that's a great question. So I never had any intention of running for elected office, but I did have a deep love of public service. I can remember when I was younger and volunteering with my grandmother, and it was just such a part of kind of my DNA. And so in my 20s, I was single and no children. And that's really how I guess, found meaning in my community and engaged in my community. I did an extraordinary amount of volunteering. I was on lots of different committees and started volunteering on boards of directors for local nonprofits. And that was really important work and work I loved, but it became apparent to me that, if I could just get on the policy side of things, I could move the needle a lot more quickly on some of these things that were, that I was working on, like, housing issues, parks and recreation development, economic development, and other things that were, I thought, really key to the success of our community. And so, I threw my name in the hat for city council. I had no idea what I was doing, Gary. Can't believe I got elected, but it was a fun ride, and we were able to do a lot of good over the 10 years that I was on the council, because I served with some really smart, amazing people who cared just as much or more about the community as I do. So,
Jade, sometimes people refer to a city council as a thankless job. You're inspiring, because it looks to me like you took that on and said, hey, I'm going to do great things over here.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I will just say that okay, maybe it is. Maybe the average person doesn't have a lot of appreciation for the work being done. But I grew up in Hutchinson, born and raised in Hutchinson, and Hutchinson gave me everything. I grew up with, very little means, and was able to take advantage of all the things our community offered, from an amazing school system, great parks, great public library. And now I have a very successful life, a successful career, a great family. And I attribute that a lot to the community that raised me, right? And so it's only fitting that I give back to that community and try to create an environment where people like me can also be uplifted in a similar fashion. So thankless in maybe one sense, but not at all thankless, very fulfilling, very meaningful, and an opportunity to give back to the community that gave so much to me. So,
Jade, when I hear you talk, it's like I can see why you were selected for the USA Woman of the Year honor. That is so cool. Where did you get your information? This program talks about leadership in challenging times, but leaders learn from other people. And you look back in your career early on, where did you learn, or where did you get that commitment that I wanted to give back to the community? Where'd that come from?
Well, I definitely think that came from my grandmother and my mother, who had huge hearts. They have both passed, but they had a big impact on kind of my moral compass. And my grandmother especially was, just my best friend. I spent a lot of time with her when I was young, lived with her for many years. And she was just a very compassionate, amazing, generous woman. So I think that was kind of where I got that grounding that, you're not just here to serve yourself, you're here to make the world a better place. But then across the spectrum of my career, I've had the opportunity to work with people who have mentored me. I think of, John Montgomery, the publisher of the Hutch News, who used to work for Harris Enterprises. He was a very wonderful man, great husband and father and leader that I learned a lot from. I got to work under Dave Kerr at the Hutch Reno County Chamber, who was a public servant for most of his career and taught me a lot. Lynette Lacey, she ran our local leadership. I think it was called Reno County Leadership, but she was part of the Kansas Leadership KLC faculty for a long time. So, I mean, there's so many people who pour into you over the course of your life, and it's hard to name them all, Gary, but just very lucky to have been raised in a community that believes in investing in people. Lots of high school teachers. I was just reflecting on Rusty Hills. I don't know if you know him, but
I remember Rusty. Yes.
Yeah, he was my favorite high school teacher and my calculus teacher, and he's really struggling right now with ALS. But people like that, they just go about their everyday lives. They're doing their job, and they probably have no idea how much they're changing the trajectory of people's lives. And so it's my goal to be a person like that, because so many people have done that for me.
And I can see you now have I'll say a platform, but a way to be able to give back. What do you tell other people that come to you and say, get involved in your community? How important is that? Because you'll find some people that they say they just do their own thing. You got involved, you were committed to your community, you were trying to give back. But what do you tell others that are a little bit hesitant in that area?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think some people feel like they're maybe not qualified. And that's what's so interesting about public service. There's this air of you have to be this type of person, you have to have a degree, or you have to, I don't know, be an attorney, or there's all these ideas, but that's, not how our country was founded. Like, we are a country of government, of the people, by the people, for the people. And there isn't necessarily qualification to be involved outside of a desire to help others and serve others and make your community a better place. So if you have that desire, don't let this imposter syndrome or idea that you're not worthy hold you back. And I do encourage people to reach out to other leaders in their community and ask, how can I get involved? So, when I was in Hutch, I always encouraged young people, or people of any age, if you want to get involved, chat with me and I will put you in contact. Everybody has a passion, right? And if you care about animals, or if you care about parks, if you care about people who are experiencing homelessness, there are opportunities to plug in. So I just really encourage people to know that you have something to offer, and that can translate to a better community for all. So don't let that hold you back.
You know what? You mentioned community, and so much of the communities we have in our part of the world, it is so important. And there's a place for everyone to volunteer their time and help out and give back. I want to switch gears. You were named USA's Woman of the Year, state of Kansas. Looking through the list, some amazing people like yourself across the country that were listed there. What's happened to you since that honor?
Oh my goodness. Well, so people have been so gracious and congratulatory, and it's just been a wonderful outpouring of support, which is, a little bit difficult for me because I see women all over the state. I interact with women all over the state who I feel are just as deserving or more of this honor. So again, I feel really blessed that I'm in this building right now, and I could name a dozen people in this building alone that are as deserving or more deserving of that honor. So just feel really, really lucky that they chose me for some reason.
Well, it's a very neat honor to have. We'll take a quick break and come back and talk a little bit about broadband. I just want to touch on your job because you have a big job, but what that means to Kansans as well. So our guest today is honoree of the Woman of the Year from USA Today. Her name is Jade Piros de Carvalho, and she is in Topeka, works for the State Office of Broadband. We'll talk about that when we come back.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, leading in challenging times with our guest, Jade Piros de Carvalho. And Jade, your new job is working in broadband for the state of Kansas to help everyone have broadband. How big is that job?
Well, it's a big job, but I think it's a really important job. And as the director of the NTIA in charge of these programs says, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration is part of the Department of Commerce at the federal level. And he says, this is our generation's infrastructure moment. And I really believe that, generations before us built the highway system, brought a universal electricity to everyone. And now it's incumbent upon us to get this right, to make sure that everybody has that critical internet infrastructure available to them to fully participate in an increasingly technologically driven economy. So big job, fun job, lots to do.
How are you doing that? Are you going out into the area, or are you going around the state? Where are you getting the information back?
Yeah, so we all know that there's a digital divide, not just in Kansas, but in the nation. When I talk about digital divide, it's just really that gap between those who have that critical infrastructure and those who don't. And so what we have been charged to do in advance of getting hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government to shore up these gaps, we have been charged to put together a strategic plan for our state, a 5-year strategic plan on broadband access, where broadband is and where it isn't, and on digital equity. And that really speaks to, where is broadband not affordable? Where do people not have devices like laptops? Where do people not have the skills to, get an online checking account, apply for a job online, work remotely, et cetera? So we're going out to every corner of the state. We've been spending the last couple of months traveling, and next week I'll be in Oberlin and Goodland and Oakley, and just talking to people about, how is your broadband? Do you have it? Do you not? Is it too expensive to take? Where are those gaps? And trying to better understand the needs of Kansans. And then we'll put that all together in a strategic plan and send that up to our federal funders for approval. And then hopefully get get approval, and then we will get hundreds of millions of dollars to that our office will then allocate in competitive grants to help bridge these gaps.
With your energy behind it, I have no doubt this is going to go somewhere. So I appreciate that. Last question. What's it like to be in Topeka at the State House, looking at the state capitol? What's that like?
Yeah, well, it's really kind of stunning. I feel so grateful that I'm, like I was telling you earlier, I'm in this office and looking out my window, I'm looking at the Capitol, and this is where, policy is made to help further the needs of Kansans. And again, just a true blessing to be a part of this process, and really just, again, grateful that I have this opportunity to give back to the state that has given me so much. And really, more importantly, to continue to create an environment where people like me and every Kansan can succeed.
Well, if you want to find out more about the USA Women of the Year, you can go to USA's website and just type that in, find out. But you're in great company, and I can see why you deserve to be there. Jade, thanks for being on our program today.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thanks again for having me.
Jade Piros de Carvalho has been our guest today on Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. The program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.